Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Eyes 8.6. Okay, talked maybe a bit too much at the end of the last episode, but we're gonna pick it up right where we left off and continue. And with this, and obviously the thing here is minor dissent from the non-smoking thing. Just maybe represents my views on it, and I also upped because we had been down at just a little over 7 metal coming in, and this will get us up to I think about 7 or 8. No, there may be a multipliers there, but not a whole lot, and I want to build up a lot more metal. And no. Grand battle plans. Okay, yes. Now let's continue looking for... I'm not really exactly sure what this does for me. Well, might as well research it anyways. I understand installation security. Europeans. Switching to the latest installation security and facilities management, we can better insulate our ports, air bases, and other installations from unorthodox attacks such as those from enemy commandos. Okay, not sure. I understand what they're saying there, but I don't know what they mean by in the game terms. Move my police down there to reduce some revolt risk that's showing up there. You can see there's some areas that we don't quite have police sitting on. Now we have another decision to make. From the 15th Army Corps motorized. Yes, before it was the 16th or 14th or something, I forget. And this is Hermann Hoth's group. Papa Hoth. Yes, we'll do this. And Deep Battle Doctrine. Not something very much the Germans liked. For this. Push deep into the enemy, disrupt him, keep him from coordinating, resisting, supplying. His rear, so, or his front lines by doing that in his rear. So between the SA, the SS that you'll get with the Orpo, and then later on in the east some Shuma battalions, and I think there's also some various other stuff. I don't think you need to build any internal or security units. Really, I'm trying to think. I don't think too much. I'm trying to remember my last. Of course, you're quite capable of sending the SA out away from Germany to protect things as well. You don't have to leave them as home as probably as much as I will. But okay, heavy anti-aircraft armament on ships, particularly heavy ships. That's what they affect most, where this affects a lot of, torpedo boats and destroyers and whatever. So put up at 40. And there's also another technology that an artillery barrage. It's now got too far ahead. Okay, we're going to stop that. Officer recruitment program. Yeah, I see. If you notice, the leadership goes down there by 5%, but I think we should do this, which obviously affects everything. But what this will do is reduce the number of needed officers for different unit types, and sort of a backwards way of saying increase officers. It just says you don't need as many to have the same effects on a unit. Oh, and we have another one. Yeah, let's wait. It's going to take a while to get that on, but we're going to be a while before the war starts. And right now we're building units, but yeah, let's offset that with these, since we have one and a half about, but thanks, we'll get those there. Dr. Lutz Heck, interesting person. Most assuredly he was a Nazi. He was in charge of the Berlin zoos. He was one of the people, he bought into this Nazi regressive genetic breeding philosophy. And by regressive is what I mean is that somehow like you can generally speaking take two tall people and breed them together, and you're more than likely to have tall children. It's not the only thing that affects the height of the children, and this is one thing I've learned being an American, because we eat a lot more meat, and particularly beef, than in a lot of places in the world. Americans are generally taller. Might also be the steroids that we stick in our beef too. That could have an effect. I don't know all of it, but and this is why a lot of the people in Europe, particularly, and maybe before, but because this was definitely the case before, because Americans were noted as being taller by the British. American colonists were noted as being significantly taller than their genetically the same background as British people there, because of their much better diets in America. The colonies easily had much more food, plentiful, much more of the time than Europe did. But like saying in a sort of the post-World War II generation, a lot of the kids that grew up there, they, in the war years and the post-war years, food was rationed, so people didn't grow as big. That also affects things. But so we do know that breeding, and that's why I have so many dog breeds and whatever, you can breed genetic traits to be more common. You look at like modern chickens or something, often, they do those and breed them up to be big fat chickens that are good to eat, but may not be the most healthy for them. He wanted to, or thought he could breed back to earlier species or earlier generations of a species, or however you want to say that. He wanted to bring back the aurochs, wanted to bring back because the aurochs is the big cattle that went extinct in Europe, and some of the other ones, I'm sort of blanking on them right now. And so he thought he could see the traits in the animals and that were similar to the old ones, and sort of breed them together to sort of purify out the more modern traits, to go back to the older groups. This is also sort of what the Nazis thought they could do to purify the Aryan race, to go back to the super Aryan race, that before it was polluted way back, even before the time of Rome, way in their super mythical past, thought they could breed out over time non-Aryan traits. Well, to my understanding, because again I'm not a geneticist, but you can't, not by breeding. And they looked at what they today sort of call like the Heck cattle, named after him. is that, yeah, it's a bigger cow. It's a has bigger horns. It has some of the physical appearance of some of the old aurochs, which was a big, super big cow bull in Europe. You can see the from the palace at Knossos here in Crete that they found, you know, those guys leaping over the bulls. The guys look sort of little and the bulls are super big. Well, that's how big they actually were compared to each other. They were super big, and that whole species is, I think, mostly humans' fault, but killed out in Europe or everywhere. Is that, you know, geneticists will tell you, you may be able to breed up a, you know, cattle that look like the old aurochs, but it won't have the same genetics. It'll have very different genetics, and it just, you can't regressively breed the Nazi superhuman or the Nazi super animals of the past. You can't do it. You can maybe genetically manipulate things because there's lots of stuff in the genetic codes, but that this sort of partially debunks their whole philosophy. But he bought into that, and he was also a you know, obviously he's a zoologist, runs the Berlin Zoo, and he also was also post-war too. Went down to a lot of, mostly in Southwest Africa, and collected species for the Berlin Zoo. We can send him down there, improve our relations with South Africa, or we cannot send him to go get species. Costs some money, buying permission to get the animals and the crews. Costs some supplies, but 500 supplies in the grand scheme of things is near nothing, and improves our relations with South Africa. Basically, we're sort of using this as a spy mission. So yes, we will do that. And I will tell you, it does just what it said on the description. It improves our relations with South Africa. Unfortunately, I have not, either with the Hearts of Iron 3 or 4 version, really explored the sort of end version of what happens in South Africa and Southwest Africa that I have with Tanganyika, but that's on the someday to do. We give them money for rare materials now. What does Portugal want? Money for fuel? No. We might have almost done rare materials with you, Portugal, because I want you as an ally. Okay, send the Schleswig-Holstein to the West Indies. Should the Navy send the SMS Schleswig-Holstein to the West Indies on a training and goodwill mission, will be commanded by frigate Captain Arnold Bentleg, and officer cadet ship. She had a complement of 850 men, including 150 cadets, officer cadets in training. And yes, they did send off, this is how I found out about it. This is just a standard, as you could sort of tell, World War I or post-World War I, before the Nazis, sort of postcard for the Schleswig-Holstein with the old style flags there. I don't have a photo of them in the Caribbean. I'm sure I'm not sure they exist because the war happened and things got destroyed. But they probably exist, some photos of them, because probably some locals down there took photos. So if any of you are in and around Haiti, no, probably nothing exists there. The Dominican Republic, Cuba, Costa Rica, Venezuela, Mexico, or Colombia, I think those are the nations that they visited, is why I put them there. Have in your local, I don't know, resources to find a picture of the Schleswig-Holstein visiting, or some of the things. I'd love for you to send me a digital copy of the event. This is again part of the training missions that Germany, because like it says here, and I looked this up, 150 cadets are on the ship at this time to go off, and these guys are all basically cadets to become officers at some point. Most likely that, I presume they're old enough that these aren't young HJ cadets, so that they're old enough that they're going to be officers in World War II. And so they can go off and get experience, and I would be shocked that if none of those people were submarine captains, they, you know, they go out there, they send a lot of, I know at least in some navies, they encourage them to do diaries, and the diaries are sort of like ship's logs. Yes, some of the things, what they did today in training, you know, we ran up and down the, you know, the mastheads and whatever, or we examined how to repair a particular gun part or something. Sure, they did some of that stuff, but they also, you know, are supposed to record their position, record interesting observations like, oh, how do you enter, you know, the port down here in Lisbon or something like that. And often, at least I know in the British Navy in the 18th century and early 19th century, they're encouraged to draw the ports and things, and so that they go in so that later on they can use those as references to for the officer himself to use as for navigation aids, you know, recognize land, you know, coastlines and things like that. So I'm sure they would record depths of harbors, tricks of sailing in and out of these ports, so that if in future, say, we're at war with Venezuela or Colombia, a submarine could sit out from the port and know how ships would come out and be able to sink them. And maybe Venezuela is not at war and they're just going to wait for the flagged American ship, and they know how they need to come out and are going to sink them. That's the type of stuff that's going on, as well as just seamanship, as you know, and as well as a shakedown cruise. Just how is the ship running? You know, does it break down? Does you know, all the batteries work and, you know, going across the Atlantic? So we can send it. It's going to cost us a little bit of money and a little bit of supplies, prove relations, but get some battleship crew training or not. So we're going to do that. And because we did that, another event will happen as well. We give them money for rare materials. No, not at this time. Exergen, my good friend, long-term friend on the forum, has recently been giving me some good information on German-British naval interactions during this time period. One of the ones was the Deutschland. Was in the Irish Sea, though he had no photos of that. That was in 34, so that's a little before the time period. But they had in 37 the and from the British Naval Review, I think for the coronation of the new king here. You don't get to see political leaders, do you? Intelligence. Do they show them here? No, they don't, like you're doing. Oh, ministers. Well, yeah. Okay, here. Ministers. You know, the new whether for Edward or, you know, when I get to Britain, I've got so much material. God, I'm gonna make a mod that makes Third Reich events look, or it's going to make about as detailed or better than Third Reich events dealing with Britain. I got so much stuff I want to do. I've been collecting a lot of stuff with the various succession stuff, especially because this is going to be hard to iron for, to tie into the possibility of going with a fascist government under Edward. Oh, it's going to be a fabulous mod someday. It's just going to take a lot to build it, but I've got so much material. I'm saving images and all kinds of stuff going on, and a lot of interesting detail. But during the coronation, they'd often do, because Britain's such a naval power, do a naval review, and that's what I think it was. And a lot of nations, including the Soviet Union, they had pictures of each of the ships. Like Japan, they sent out like a cruiser, and the others sent battleships as part of the scheduled celebration naval review situation going on. The Germans, what, is it the Grass Bay? I forget. Exergen. Don't worry, I'm saving all the information, but And he's looked into some other British-German naval interactions going on. We'll give them money for fuel, no. Which will make it into some event at some point. But there was a lot. A lot of stuff going on. This is what I know I've talked about in other episodes, and since we have a sort of quiet moment here, it's really fascinating for me to, because I've watched all the standard, World at War series, the documentary series from the 70s, or was it even the late 60s, or what? It was pretty early with Laurence Olivier narrating. It's an excellent series. Every one of you should go out and watch it, even if it means delaying watching some of my episodes. It's an excellent series. It's sort of a standard. Everybody should see it. Now, we know a lot of stuff that they didn't know about the war. Like when that series was made, the Ultra Code that the British had, that was still a massive secret. That it wasn't, that effect on the war wasn't taken into account in the series. So we know that that there's bad or incorrect information in that series, and when there's much better, or there's much more stuff after it. But it's such a great, well done series that just sort of you should see it, even though there's other stuff you should also see too. And so I grew up with a lot of that stuff, and this is going to be fuel too. But as I'm continuing to research, as I continue to read more books, it's, if you will, the tapestry, the way the events, and yes, that does tie in why I like Third Reich events, but the events going on of this naval review happens there, this person, King Carol gets removed and King Michael comes into power in Yugoslavia, or similar people governing in Yugoslavia, I say Yugoslavia here, but Romania, in Yugoslavia, and all of this stuff, how it all interplays, and sort of the interplay of all of the stuff is just fascinating to me. And it's not just, oh, this event sprung out of nowhere, the evil Nazis were evil, so they did X. No, it was this whole sort of thing going on. Like I was talking, I think it was the last episode, was that the Germans were selling production capabilities to the Soviets because nobody else would. So that allowed the Soviets to build, tank types and other things that they couldn't have built otherwise. So that affects how Germany is in fighting them. It's all interrelated. Okay, prepare the military administration for conquered lands. Okay, this is the main one. Wehrmacht Verwaltung, Besetter Gebiet. Okay, I'm sure that I'm butchering that. Reichsgrenz. Grenz is what, border? Border detached, what? Reich, obviously. Okay, during World War II, Nazi Germany created military-led regimes in occupied territories. Okay, sort of, yeah, okay. Which were known as military administration, or whatever. These differed from the Reichskommissariats, which were led by the Nazi Party officials. The military administration was led by a military commander, however you want to pronounce either that or the acronym, whatever. Armed forces of the Wehrmacht in the then so-called Reichskommissariat were headed by the... Okay. I do really like the immersion elements of the correct German names and the correct German abbreviations. I just don't want to try to pronounce them. Sorry. Okay. Prepare for the occupation. So, cost us a bunch of supplies, a lot of supplies, some money, and not terribly thrilled with the money. Gain some manpower, and I do also believe that by doing this, we will get OOBs of occupation units later on. So yes, we will do that. And that is a way to pay for. And yeah, we are here right now, and I know we're already doing the Gneisenau. See, when I hear Gneisenau and Scharnhorst and Bismarck and Tirpitz pronounced in various documentaries, I can get it, and I think my pronunciation, well, maybe very still American accented to a German ear, but is right. But when I just try to read these things and never have heard them, so, and let's see, we've got, yeah, so what I'm actually going to reduce this right now, but we are paying up front for these things. We could be building, obviously, if we weren't shipping out so many resources, or so many supplies for resources, we could. So we're paying for that, and we've been paying for it by up front. So we're going to stop that, which just will shift this a bit more. I'm going to let a little production go on. Well, where are we at? Okay, so we've had the first time I placed them on the map. Those light divisions, and that's right there. Got this sort of light or tank division with a light amount of tanks in it. That I think is what, 3 submarines. Yeah, that building batch. That's why it's 14, and these are only 5 because there's actually pretty done. Okay. Maybe I'll give you 5 of those light balloons. That's sort of enough for now, I think. Just delete all this. This makes some sort of standard infantry divisions. Increase. Tank. Definitely engineers. Horse transport. Okay. Thinking about, well, let's just do recon cavalry. Though I do believe most divisions actually didn't use recon cavalry. This is sort of a black ice holdover from the sort of standard stuff. What they did do is, at least in some divisions I believe and stuff, they had recon foot soldiers. Often I may be called Fusiliers in the German service. Fusiliers is sort of French for Jaeger, or for rifle or whatever. A fusil is like a musket, or maybe as the French would say, fusil. But we're sort of trained to operate in smaller units out, just as sort of screening troops out in front. Okay. But we want the reconnaissance there. But maybe historically motorcycles would be better. But I am worried a bit about fuel use. I think we can do without the anti-aircraft. So let's start 3 of these and do production. It's sort of generically okay infantry divisions. So we're looking at that. That's good. those light units that I've created, personally I think there's two big faults I think with them. Let me deploy one and one. Take a look and just look at this here. Is they have no anti-tank, so if they run into any enemy armor, they're it's going to suck if that happens. They don't have nope. Okay. Any engineers to get across rivers and such. So those are their two sort of, in my opinion, great weaknesses. Okay, this is important, but before we do that, before, say, the U.S. gets pissed at us, let's see, they got lots of money. They do have a surplus of supplies, and I know they just canceled a huge mess of supplies, but maybe we can sell them 20. No, just 20. So unions at a deficit for money, so is Britain. How's Japan doing? Well, they've got money and they definitely need supplies. So we can sell them 20 supplies. Okay, accepted and accepted. Orson Welles is a fascinating person. I won't go into much about him, but he adopts the H.G. Wells War of the Worlds, the radio, and the big sort of thing is USA gets. Okay, yeah. True to basically get some scare out of it. How interesting. A bit more impact than I would have given it, but okay, basically this really dramatic radio that he does, and a bunch of people tuned in after when they originally started the thing. This is all a dramatization, you know. They clarify that to the people that this is just, you know, a radio play, but a lot of people tune in like just 2 minutes later, 5 minutes later, whatever, into the show, and the whole show is done as if there's an alien invasion. So basically, sort of in the greater New York area, I think mainly, New York State area. They create a big panic that people think that there's alien invaders because they're hearing this on the radio and that kind of thing. So, fake news. See, fake news has been around a long time. Okay, so we'll gain 5 in dissent. We'll lose some neutrality. Britain and France and the United Kingdom will be pissed at us, including the U.S. a little bit. Gains threat on all. But we'll get the first Vienna Award. Let's do that. The end of Czechoslovakia. So, I don't, you know, this is obviously a bit earlier than historically. We got this down, but shot our dissent up. We can take everything. We'll get some revolts in some of the regions, which isn't nice. Czechoslovakia, or I mean Slovakia, is almost a useless nation. Not quite, but almost. Talking again about Hearts of Iron 4, they've even expanded the different abilities with your puppets and different levels of puppets within for the Germans, as well as for now earlier with their finest hour for the Dominion states. And now you have the ability, you don't have the ability to manage your puppets in the sense of, oh, I want puppet X to produce artillery pieces or any tank guns. You can't tell them that, but you can demand, request, whatever, some of their ground units, as well as other forces from them. So, was it just ground? I don't know, but I know for sure it's ground. You can demand those from the puppets, and that is very nice, very useful. So you can now have things like the Reich Commissariats or other things out there producing units that you then, as a smart human, instead of the dumb AI, including dumb AI, including this Hearts of Iron 3, you can now control a fair amount of their units. So that, to me, is really makes me like puppets a lot better. So yes, we're gonna form puppets, and we're gonna inherit Czechoslovakia. So that gives us a lot more resources, a lot of coal, a lot of metal. Some of that, I believe, but maybe not much. What's on the wrong territory? Is that here? No, that's Zulia. Where do I have forces in the wrong? Is that where it is? These are Czech divisions that we've inherited. We should go to... oh, it's out here. Okay, we've inherited... Oh, no wonder. Don't recognize the province right way out there. Well, let's get them back to German territory as quickly as possible. We don't want to upset the Hungarians. So Poland gets its little bit of territory. Hungary gets its border region with Slovakia. There's a whole lot. I've really improved the event chain for Hearts of Iron 4, talking about the brief sort of, actually sort of war, but war is a bit strong. Border shooting at each other a little bit between the Hungarians and the Slovaks, and the Czech earlier with the sort of the Czechs, but in the Slovak part, and this stuff, and these people out here. So Hungary gets some mountains, face off against the Soviet Union in the future, as well as maybe Poland as well. Okay, good. That's nice. Got to upgrade more units. Let's reduce that down a little bit. And we're going to leave that be up at 94 because we've got so much of that. But well, we're going to have at least one or two more events. Oh, yeah. Now they should still fire. Oh, what is... I want producing 5 units. Okay. Yep, go ahead. Well, definitely. Okay. The UK has decided to guarantee independence of Poland. We knew that was going to happen. And because of all of this additional territory here, all these wonderful new factories of ours, now let's see what unadjusted, well, that'll be for metal and 16 energy. Okay, good. And 2 and 4, more rare materials too. And more metal and energy, though. Looks like a lot more energy than metal, but okay. Just 1 energy there, but still to be adjusted by various effects. And of course we got lots more leadership. Yeah, 40 up to almost 47 and a half. Okay, well, let's go with like motorized, armored, and yeah, mountain HQs, because that will all reduce our time in between attacks. I'm still getting that off, and of course units are poor supply because we all of a sudden got in places where we didn't have any supplies traced to them. So, okay. And France is now mobilizing because France is panicked that Germany may be a nasty country after all. And Petain warned you. Okay, retirement of... what the hell? Hmm? What? This guy? Or is it some other von Kleist? He was around during World War II. I don't understand this. Okay, well, let's go for this, because they say at least February 38. So why didn't it happen before? I don't know. Okay. Due to the Fritsch affair, General Paul Ludwig Edward von Kleist, Edwald, was forced into early retirement in February 1939. Okay, but was recalled to active duty on the 26th of that same year and was given command. Okay, which became Panzer Group 8 Kleist. Okay, so we're removing those brigades, presuming these things here, these units. Here, yeah, these will go bye-bye, including this thing, which I like, the battle commanders. Hopefully it will return later on. I did not know he retired. And, you know, I really like it when I learn things. Okay, now. Obviously we fired the first Vienna Award way early, because it didn't happen until 39, early 39, but 39. So, but for this event, it doesn't really matter. Now, okay, you have the this event happens. The fires gives you a little fascist Sudeten volunteer. There were a bunch of uh, I want to say Fry. Boy, I'm blanking on the proper German. A bunch of Frycore. That's it. Frycore. There it is. The Sudeten Deutsches Frycore. If I just start reading my own event, I'll get it right, won't I? Okay. There were a bunch of Frycore going on, and as it says here, because that's what I researched, 26,000 men at its peak. These are basically Sudeten Germans who had went to Germany, got military training. Some of them had infiltrated back into Sudeten-held territory, or Czech-held territory in the Sudeten lands. Secret arms caches were around. They were making some levels of engagement with Czech forces. Not that it was any full-blown major guerrilla warfare, but there were incidents. And they were, had some military training, but they were sort of a militia type thing, which represents this group here. Now, once the area is part of the German Reich before Austria gets it, I mean before Germany gets the whole thing, the great bulk of those people, of those men, as well as potentially other men, are going to the SA. and that is Lutz there. He's the chief of staff. The head of the SA officially is Hitler, just because Hitler didn't want them revolting anymore. So we're going to lose some supplies and get a SA set up under that. Let's attach them to Dresden. Yeah, there we go. So, and before we were seeing, and we're still seeing there because we don't have people occupying inside. We can use them to keep from having. Now, of course, they stayed, well, before Czechoslovakia joined, they were primarily in, or only in the Sudeten land. We'll be getting some other occupational forces, I know. Let's go down to Bruna, temporarily at least. But so they were sort of all spread out, the SA brigade, so we got them. Okay. Neurath, hope I'm saying that right. Neurath. He was the German foreign minister. I believe, I don't know what it says here, but I believe he was the foreign minister before the Nazis came into power. He was a good foreign minister. He was a rather charming individual. So that's good in a foreign minister, meaning he could go talk to other diplomats and people liked him. He was a likable guy. Obviously, he threw his lot in with the Nazis, which, of course, likable people sometimes go into, do bad things. So, he, with the taking of the rest of Czechoslovakia and creating Bohemia and Moravia as German protectorates, and as we are seeing the rise of von Ribbentrop. Von Ribbentrop was, for a while, the NSDAP's, the National Socialist German Workers' Party's foreign minister, including, if I remember correctly, before the Nazis came into power. He was their functional foreign minister. He continues to be the party's foreign minister for a while. So you have sort of a dual-track system of Ribbentrop as the party's foreign minister, as sort of Hitler's foreign minister, the guy because Ribbentrop was sort of part of Hitler, was part of Hitler's inner circle, and, constantly having dinner with him and things like this in very social settings, so he had constant access to Hitler, where I don't think Neurath had. Not that I'm not saying they didn't sit down to have dinner, but he wasn't one of the guys showing up at the Eagle's Nest or wherever that Hitler was and dropping by with the I think it was often 6 to 10 people having dinner with Hitler, and just sort of as a inner clique time hangout. It was more formal occasion. So Ribbentrop definitely had the inside track with Hitler. So if Ribbentrop is talking to whether an ambassador or a foreign leader, he's sort of talking for Hitler, where Constantine is talking for Germany. And now early on, of course, you have Hindenburg as president, so so there's a bit of a dual track and not necessarily following the same policies, and they're sometimes conflicting. Ribbentrop, I don't know, and I would generally say he was not a good foreign minister in that he was blunt. He wasn't a person people wanted to be around. I'm not saying he was rude or crude in personal life, but he wasn't the smooth-talking charmer or something that Neurath was. So Ribbentrop was a rabid Nazi, and Ribbentrop's path to power was sort of those dinners, lunches, and whatnot. Remember reading a lot of, Hitler at Berchtesgaden, walked from his, the Berghof up to the tea house, and there's Hitler normally walked with one or two other people, and then there was a gaggle behind him, including sort of the secretaries and female secretaries or whatever, sort of behind them, and periodically Hitler would be talking to somebody and say, "Oh, well, hey, yeah, okay, that's good, okay, whatever, sort of on their walk up there, agree something. Okay, that's great. Now, can you have Ribbentrop come up and talk to me? So you've got your sort of personal business, private, a moment's private time walking out of earshot of anybody else with Hitler, and you would then go maybe send up Ribbentrop to talk to Ribbentrop's problem, and then they go up and then have tea at the tea house, an afternoon tea house, and then walk back down doing a similar sort of things. And so you can sort of picture these different people coming and getting, maybe like two people. It wasn't a huge gaggle walking with Hitler. Sometimes I'm sure they were just literally, I'm sure, because I vaguely remember, but reading some of, Speer, they were talking about the view or the weather, or, it wasn't always about what National Socialist machinations they were trying to do, but that was sometimes what they were doing. And so it's this sort of a clique, family maybe a bit overstating it, but it was this sort of social group that Hitler was comfortable around. And this is how Ribbentrop gains his power, because he's one of this group. And like I say, he wasn't so blunt or crude or something to upset people in this, so he could sit down and be fine with it. But he was a rabid National Socialist, and his sort of tactic for getting power was, is Hitler would say, oh, we ought to lock up people who rob banks, let's just say, because I'm not want to talk about any specific policy or something, because I don't want to get it wrong. But we ought to lock people up who rob banks. And Ribbentrop would say, no, you're wrong. We ought to shoot people who rob banks. And so he would always sort of say, not necessarily always say Hitler was wrong, but always sort of go, no, one more step. You're not going far enough, mein Führer. You got to be harsher on it. You got to be. And Hitler always sort of liked this. You mean there's somebody that thinks, because I thought I was being provocative and locking up bank robbers, he thinks they ought to be shot. Obviously we all think bank robbers should be locked up, but so that's why I'm sort of using it as an absurdity here. But just the idea that whatever the policy was, and not necessarily locking up people or whatever, but it might be we need to raise the army to 2 million strong. No, Ribbentrop would say it should be 3 million strong or something, always a bit more over the top than Hitler. And for whatever it was, the building should be, 100 feet tall. No, they should be 120 feet tall. Whatever it was just always a little bit more sort of, and maybe disagreeing with the Fuhrer, but always on the side of being more Nazi, more dramatic. And sometimes Hitler go, no, we can't quite go that far. And they would have these discussions like this, that no, we can't quite do that. We have to. And so Hitler would sort of be within this circle, appearing as the sort of reasonable guy. And then, okay, yes, you're right, mein Führer, we can't quite go shoot all the bank robbers. We have to lock them up, or whatever, And so it wouldn't be that he would keep fighting and being aggressive with the Führer, but he would always sort of go, no, it's more, or do it more. So that's how Ribbentrop gets involved, gets his power. Now he's sent off to be the ambassador to England. I'm going to say 34, but I'm not sure on the date. He's, I think, there maybe for 2 years or 3 years. I don't know. But he's there. And Ribbentrop doesn't do too well. Because the head of state is the king, and instead of the prime minister, you sort of take your ambassadorial credentials and present them to the monarch. And things like Ribbentrop, even though he's in his, sort of morning suit and, fancy civilian kind of suit, he does the Nazi salute to the king and things like that, instead of bowing or whatever that you would normally do. And it's just, he just comes off as being this sort of aggressive National Socialist. And like I say, he's not necessarily unpleasant if you're sitting around and having an English tea with him, but he comes off as sort of this we're the bold new Germans, get out of our way sort of attitude, and really rubs sort of, from what I've read, the English diplomatic, governmental, whatever, I don't know how much it really translated to the population, but to the government staff, status groups that dealt with him the wrong way, because he was coming at it as sort of, too aggressive, where other ambassadors are trying to be sweet and charming and presenting their government's policies. Ribbentrop's going overboard. So, and then he comes back, and then sort of at this time, now it's really 39, Ribbentrop is now in ascendance. Hitler makes him foreign minister, but to sort of get him out of the way, and to get, shall we say, a nice, smooth, friendly face to deal into Czechoslovakia, they send in Neurath to Czechoslovakia to manage it. So he's the German representative into there, and for an occupation situation, I think he does rather well. I'm trying to say it because eventually he's never officially removed as Reichsprotektor of Czechoslovakia, and we'll see this in an upcoming event, they put on a deputy Reichsprotektor, and we'll get to that when we do, who basically takes over the job and is just told that he's in charge, and Neurath is told, no, the deputy now runs everything. You can stay in Prague and stay in Czechoslovakia, or you can go back to Germany. I think he mostly goes back to Germany. You'll still, so he's still officially the guy in charge, but functionally he's no longer in charge. Basically because he wasn't pushing a hardcore enough pro-German viewpoint. Bad things happened under Neurath. Absolutely. It wasn't just, he was a nice guy occupying it. No, he was a charming guy. Charming doesn't mean nice, but he was not he himself. Now there was the guy, at this time, and we'll see that the SS guy who's put in charge in Czechoslovakia is Karl Hermann Frank, the sort of the rabid SDP guy, is put in charge of that, and he's as brutal as sort of can be. So he's doing his SS thing, fairly independent of him, but so and that's sort of hunting spies and saboteurs and dissenters and whatever. So yeah, the Germans were being their somewhat brutal style, but for his job he was doing fairly well, I think. And if my Czech friends, and I do have a few of them online here, want to dispute some of that, I would gladly have you to dispute if something you really think was, because like I say, I'm not trying, under his time only good things happened. No, bad things happened, but I don't know how much they were associated with him. But he's obviously somewhat responsible because he did not oppose the bad things happening in any sort of public way, and he was mostly trying to smooth over problems of occupation. That's sort of what he was doing, and I think, like I say, did it fairly well. No need, they're still upgrading. Okay, Kampfflieger Schulen 1+2. How's that? Okay, prospective twin-engine fighter, bomber, and reconnaissance pilots, after receiving basic flight training, went on to the sea flying schools, where they received further 50 to 60 hours flying. These pilots were given ground training in advanced aeronautic subjects and flew obsolete operational types, such as the early versions of the HE-111. Yeah, the very early HE-111s really sort of sucked, I understand. Ju-52s, Ju-86s, and the Dornier Do-17s. On leaving the sea schools, the twin-engine fighter pilots went to their specialist school at the various specialist training establishment. The pilots to fly multi-seat aircraft joined up with their crews. Combined crew training began, flying in operational types. And when they say combined crew training, that's very important. Even if it's just a two-man crew, love it. Teamwork really had to work out, and things really sort of taking 2 or 4 or whatever guys that all are perfectly excellent, 100% experience. They've been in the war for 5 years, know their jobs inside out, but have never flown with each other and are sort of like from different squadrons and have different habits and different things. They do things different. They got to be teamwork, and that's important. And so they're building the flight team as not just individuals knowing how to do it, but building that flight team, and that's important. So they're doing that right. On completion of their training at the specialist school, the crews usually remained together and was sent to an operational unit, having passed through their respective specialist training schools. The crews were sent to operational training units. Here the crews learned tactical methods of particular operational units they were to later join. From the time he joined the Luftwaffe until he arrived at his training schools or whatever, a fighter or dive bomber pilot had received about 13 months of training with 150 to 200 hours flying. A bomber reconnaissance pilot had received 20 months of training and 220 to 270 hours. These figures refer only to men who had passed through the system prior to the beginning of 1942, or in that year the Luftwaffe training organization, efficient and smooth running at the beginning of the war, began to crack under the strain exerted upon it. Okay, so the reason I read all that to you is I had never read it before and wanted to learn. And sitting here silent, I thought in reading it wouldn't be as interesting to you. Okay, metal. Well, I finally got more than 5,000 metal, was sort of my goal, but now, okay, yeah. And supplies, manpower, okay, yeah, we're going to do it. Can we get a school out of this? Maybe not specifically, okay. Yeah, I'm intending as this series goes on not to so much reading my events because I already know them. No need. It's upgrading still, or it's maybe in those queues there. Okay, Czech forts. Another event inspired and set up originally by George, 1941. Basically, or to some degree, the Czech fortifications were built very similar to the Maginot Line in various areas, and to my understanding used some of the same basic architects to set up at least some of the basic bunker systems. So I'm sure there were differences, because I'm just sure there were differences, but I don't know how big and how much and how often. But the point is that they were very similar. And as you can see here, I just like the way that guy's lecturing in front of the group. That guy looks like he's an umpire with a white armband on it. But they shot up, tested, attacking a bunch of these forts to see how easy, hard, whatever, what does it take to get through these forts that they believed in, which basically were in many ways similar to the Maginot Line forts, to learn how to breach the walls and how they'd be able to do that. So the Germans went on this program. So assault weapons gain, that's, at least if you're not 100% familiar, which we haven't been researching any of that, that's this. We'll get some gain up on that one there, which is the thing that helps us get through fortification as opposed to bridging or just generic engineering improvements. So we will get 30 days additional from looking at that. John Rabe at Nanking. Okay, this event is fired because it's been enough days after whatever Nanking's been taken, and maybe there's a hard stop at it. You can read it. He is, let's see, that guy there. They're wearing armbands. The Germans and some other Europeans were fairly protected at the city of Nanking, and the Japanese, I mean, they behaved as bad or worse than Nazis ever did in taking a city. Obviously, the Nazis, well, I mean, we're pretty brutal in the second uprising, or the main uprising of Warsaw, to the city. But to my knowledge, the Nazis didn't just take people out of their houses and kill them. Obviously, the ghetto uprising, they just liquidated everybody in that they could. But the Japanese went in and just butchered huge numbers. I'm just quickly seeing if I can see some of the numbers here. I don't want to say that there were millions and there were only tens of thousands or something, but there were very large numbers of the stuff. And the Japanese took a fair number of photographs of them butchering the people, including samurai sword practice on real people as they were lined up and things like that. Japanese government agreed not to attack part of the city that did not contain Chinese military forces. Members of the International Committee for the Nanking Safety Zone attempted to persuade the Chinese government to move all their troops out of the area. They were partly successful. This group here, along with other foreign organized this committee, they got lots and lots of people, Chinese people, into sort of protected facilities, churches, other foreign-owned buildings, and to a point the Europeans literally just stood outside of these buildings with just masses of people inside, and the Japanese were, particularly the Germans obviously, because they were getting more and more into alliance with them, but a lot of the foreigners did not go out and do that, kill them or rush into them. So, and Rabe, who works for Siemens, does it, and he comes back and tries to publicize what went, or all the terrible things the Japanese are doing in Germany, and people didn't, or the Germans and particularly the Japanese didn't like it. So this negatively affects our relationship with Japan. So I wanted him to be remembered as a good guy. Okay, well, we finally have more production space. Well, yes, I sometimes agonize would be the wrong term, but sit and think and what to do. Okay, so we just got a few. That's just about ready to hit for. It's about the halfway mark for those. So, okay, well, how's our... That's hitting the halfway mark for the heavy bombers. Okay, we want 2 heavy bombers. And we want 2 naval. And they got a flying boat. Just one flying boat. That's quite a lot by seas there. Those guys are just starting, so that's good. Submarines. Okay, those are fairly good. Well, let's see about another closer support Stuka. Another 2. Just 2 fighters, and we're going to move all of these down to the bottom, so that should shift that a bunch there. Okay, that's good. Some of these are sort of fairly long-term production, like these guys. We're trying to build up practicals to bring down the cost. What is the current? Oh, well, no, not for 2 of them for 1. It looks actually sort of gone up a bit. I think it was at 28. Various practicals and whatever. Sort of the mystery. I really, really, really love the new production line system in Hearts of Iron 4. I could almost, I mean, I'm not talking about the bad AIs or whatever, but all the things that we've lost in, OOBs, which are coming back if you haven't been known. We're going to get chain of command OOB hierarchies for Hearts of Iron 4. I'm not sure when it's going to happen, but what I can say or can't say, but I'm not sure when it's going to happen, but we're going to get it. I'm not sure what it's going to look like. I suspect, and I can say this because I don't know, I suspect it's going to be, because over here they have the hierarchical, the army or the theaters. I suspect it's going to be something that's over here that you'll have like a theater commander, maybe like one, like an army command or something, and then all the rest of the divisions in the corps. That's my guess. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be anything on the map. I would love it to be on the map, but I don't think it is. I don't know what the different effects generals at different levels will have. I don't know, but something's coming back for hierarchical command in Hearts of Iron 4. I don't know if it's going to be all the levels. I don't know if that. Well, obviously, theoretically, you can have a corps of just one division and have a general in charge of that corps, and so you have a divisional general. Now, can we mod in more and more levels so that you can have from theoretical theater all the way down to divisional levels to have generals in all of the positions? I'm not sure. I don't know, but we're getting that. So, but even with all the various losses, fuel losses, is the production line system. I think the production line system is wonderful, because what it really does, instead of this sort of screwy, in my opinion, tactical or practical system here, is you start building heavy bombers. I sort of wish they'd also do aircraft factories as its own thing, but that's not moddable. I don't even think we can get in and do that. But is you start building aircraft lines, and if you want to change from one model of, from the Ju-88A to the Ju-88B, it just takes a little bit of disruption of production. You want to change that to another model of bomber, it's greater production. You want to change that to tanks, well, that's a complete and total disruption, and there's, it might as well theoretically be starting from scratch. But as you sort of build up, work in the production, it gets more and more efficient, and I think that's wonderful and the way to go, and sort of the way it was. And so if you wanted to change between stuff, so if I really wanted to start building heavy transports now, I would be putting them into production, and it would start out really slowly producing them, and they just take a while to get built, but eventually they just get faster and faster. And if it's done right, does the models increase in abilities? They just minor disruption to production, and it would just be great. I think that is sort of the best system. On that praise of Hearts of Iron 4 is something I think is super excellent. We're going to end this episode. I want to thank all of you for watching. I want to really thank you for liking the videos. I do appreciate it. It helps the channel, and also helps the channel is the engagement of you getting out there and making a comment. I prefer positive comments, and I do like negative comments if there's something that you think I'm not doing well. Tell me what and why. I want to get better. We may never agree on on what my goals versus what you want to watch, but I do want to hear what you're thinking. And of course, everything that I say here, as opposed to what's written on the screen, I label historical commentary. So if you've got, and I do welcome this, corrections to it, I'm happy to have you post that as well. And along with that, I really, really help out if you can go tell a friend or an enemy or a person you've never met to check the channel out. I really would appreciate that. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do. It helps things going here. Just more subscribers helps me and the channel get more access to more facilities and capabilities at YouTube. So I've already sort of moved into the sort of first level of getting a little bit more, that I'm over, I think it was over 900 or something subscribers, that I have a little more access to that. More and more levels will help me. Obviously, sort of the big level is like the 1 million subscriber. I don't think I'll ever get anywhere near that, but hey, it'd be lovely to get 10,000 or something. So thank you for subscribing if you already have, and please do if you haven't. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.